if there is a lesson learned here is that hungry po for data rin yung mga tao. And I think that's one lesson that DOH should have learned also from this experience. I brought this up during the last hearing na meron din naman palang projections and like you said, may metrics naman din si DOH pero walang alam ang publiko about this. That's why when Octa released on something, naging media darling sila. So lagay natin doon sa perspektibong yun, dalang sinasabi nga ng media, wala silang naririnig na detalye or projections from our government. That's why bigla silang shift to Octa at nakikinig sa kanila. So now moving forward, Dr. Herrera and to Octa, how can we now have a proper coordination para hindi nakikipag-unahan or that ang iniiwasan lang naman natin dito at ang ayaw din mangyari ng mga tao is that hindi mailabas transparent yung data. Ang importante kasi maipass through sa inyo like what Yusek Herrera was saying, but it doesn't mean that we will not disclose certain information to the public. So is there collaboration already between DOH and Octa as to how to go about this? Because USEC projections and metrics are also important. Diba? Dahil nahuhuli rin tayo or hindi tayo nagre-release, Octa felt the need to do what they had to do. Kaya nagkaroon ng fear-mongering among our, like you said, napaaga sila. Diba? Pero hindi rin kasi nila nakita, nag-a-announce ang DOH. So what now is our direction? Because this is in aid of legislation, so I want to find solutions to our present problems. Ano ngayon ang direction natin, Octa and DOH? Through you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair.
Secretary Herrera.
Yes po, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon po, Congresswoman Herrera. Actually, siguro po ang pinakaunang dapat gawin, upo na lang po kami ng Octa para pag-usapan at makapag-align po kami dun sa mga assumptions na ginagamit, dun sa models na ginagamit, para makita po namin kung saan kami pwedeng magkaroon ng alignment. And then after that, we can discuss on these public announcements para po hindi nagkakaroon ng confusion din sa public. And we are always open naman po, like, for example, they were able to see something in their projections that should be flagged to the public. Open naman po kami para umupo din with them, maintindihan namin ano yung dapat i-flag para pareho po kami ng sinasabi sa mga tao.
But again, this is not to control the flow of information, Yusek. May I hear from Octa, will that be okay with Octa?
Thank you, Congresswoman DH and Chair. Yes, we're in complete agreement with Yusek Herrera. We've been working with her and her team. We will continue to work with them. And if there's a way that we can do early warning, because that's really what Octa does. It's just early warning, monitoring and early warning. Now, we understand, it's so hard in government because you have to go through a bureaucracy before you release the same findings and data. And so when we see an alert, now when we see, let's say, a tsunami, if we're on a beach now, we see a tsunami, we say, okay, it's coming, okay, but there could be a way that we could announce it with DOH earlier, and we could align, and strategize how we can release information. Of course, we want to remain autonomous. We want to remain independent. We want to continue doing what we're doing and informing the public. And we understand the limitations of government. They can't just come out quickly with their monitoring reports. And so there can be an arrangement, Congresswoman BH, where we continue to be autonomous, but at the same time coordinated and constantly collaborating with DOH. We agree with Yusek Herrera. We'll sit down with her tomorrow if need be. Or this afternoon if she has time.
Yes,
yeah.
If I may interrupt, kaya ko lang din gustong idagdag yun kasi you have to admit also that there are times that inaccurate din yung data ni Octa. Like what, yung example kanina ni Stella, yung dun sa kay Lino Cayetano na nagko-complain si Lino dun sa data na nilabas nyo, na sinabi niya, teka, mali yung nilalabas yung data. So that's why, hindi rin kayo pwedeng hindi naglalabas, hindi nagko-corroborate with someone kasi hindi don't have the perfect and accurate data as well. Nakakasira kayo at nakaka-create din kayo talaga ng takot. Just like in the case of Tagig, na very classic example, isa ni Lino. Bakit yung sinasabing ganito? Ganito naman yung case sa amin. Ano ba nangyari doon? How come nagkamali kayo doon?
Okay. Chair, Ma'am BH, we talked with them. yeah, they were really very disappointed. And by the way, this is not the first time. This is also the case with Baguio City, with some other local government units, no. Why? Because there's a dissonance po. Ay, no. May pagkakaiba po yung lumalabas sa data drop ng Department of Health at yung data na galing ho sa local government. Ang problema namin sa Octa, because we follow international standards, we only get data from the national agency, and that's the Department of Health. So lagi ho talagang may difference yung local government data, may lag po dun sa data ng department. Yun ho yung explanation talaga. At lumabas rin naman po yung nag-explain rin po kami sa Taguig, nag-explain rin po kami sa Baguio nung nagalit sila sa amin. So pero ginagamit na po namin kasi yung DOH data. So in-explain naman namin po sa kanila na ito ho, nakita ho natin, ito ho yung lumalabas sa DOH.
Mr. Chair, if I may interrupt, Mr. Chair, that's precisely why we shouldn't just publish without collaborating, without asking, kasi hindi nyo naman kabisado yung lugar eh. Diba? Hindi nyo kabisado yun. You also have to ask them, ano yung naging sitwasyon before you release data? Kasi nagpapanik yung mga tao. And I hope this is one lesson that Octa has learned from all this, diba? Kailangan nagko-collaborate tayo before we release information kasi nakakaroon ng fear yung mga tao. And I hope ma-keep in mind natin yan, Mr. Ranjit, Mr. Guido, and to all the Octa na let's collaborate para naman mas maintindihan yung data at hindi tayo naglalabas basta-basta ng data na ganito na nagkakakos ng panic sa mga tao. Ngayon, my next question is there a possibility, or in your study, I'm sure nakita nyo na that a lot of Filipinos don't want the lockdowns anymore, diba? I'm sure na nagka-poll kayo niyan, makikita nyo na talagang ayaw na ng lockdown. And mas matindi na yung call na we have to live with this pandemic, we have to live with this COVID, diba? At kailangan pagbutihin na lang natin ang treatment. So, meron bang pag-aaral ang DOH and ang Octa kung paanong, if we could already do such a thing, na we just have to learn how to live with this pandemic? Sa projections natin or sa nakikita natin. Mr. Chair, through you, I think Yusek Herrera has an answer.
Yes, Yusek Herrera.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Congresswoman BH. Actually, ma'am, ito po yung ginagawa natin ngayong shift in policy that we have piloted here in the National Capital Region, that we are now going to be less restrictive by doing these granular lockdowns. When we tried analyzing what we were doing in this region-wide or city-wide lockdowns, nakita po natin that, for example, in NCR, based on the models na ginagawa po ng FASTER, yung data na kinukuha natin, nakita po natin na dito sa NCR, mga 30% lang po ng mga barangay ang talagang burdened with the number of cases. And the 70%, hindi po sila ganun kataas. It's not high risk. So with this, and plus the second na nakita natin na hindi na mukhang nag-work talaga yung mga wide na mga restrictions natin like ECQ, MECQ, we decided to recommend to IATF this shift in policy where we do granular lockdowns, where local governments can focus more on doing their response in these specific highly burdened areas. And we can do sa mga non-lockdown areas, we can do the other easing of restrictions katulad po ng ginagawa ngayon ng IATF na gradually ginagawan po natin ng mga pagtaas na or ine-expand natin ang pagbukas dito sa mga sectors na to. So ito po yung ginagawa natin and it's soon to be rolled out to other areas of the country as soon as we get the analysis for the NCR pilot.
Okay, so what is now DOH doing about yung hindi parehas ng data or mabagal ang catch-up ng data ng DOH at saka ng LGU? Kaya nagkakamali rin ang projection ng Octa. Anong sistema po ang gagawin po natin dyan? Ang dagdag ko na rin doon, hindi ba natin pwede rin idagdag yung ginagawa ng Mandaluyong dahil ang ganda ng presentation ng data nila. Vaccinated, ito yung naging cases. Non-vaccinated, ito yung cases. First dose, ito yung cases. I think that's a very transparent data that I would want na, and nalaman ko when I was asking Quezon City government to do the same, sabi nila they submit the same thing to MMDA and I think to DOH. So why doesn't DOH present the same thing to the public? Kasi ang natatakot ako dito sa may rule na vaccination, non-vaccinated, baka nagiging kampante yung mga vaccinated pero pag titignan mo naman yung data, hindi ganun dapat ang nagiging actions ng gobyerno.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Yusek, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congresswoman BH, actually, unang-una po, binabago na ho natin yung case bulletin natin ngayon. We're just trying to finalize our draft where vaccination coverage will be included and those fully vaccinated, how many nagkasakit, yun pong mga sinabi nyo, it's part of what we are going to include into our new case bulletin. The second, meron po talagang difference ang data ng local at saka ng national. Ang process po kasi natin, we rely on the local governments to encode and update our list para dumating sa amin. So usually, mas mauuna sila, mas may first-hand information sila. Kami po kasi, we still reconcile and validate our data sets. So yun pong sa Octa, kaya po may difference, yung ganon. I think we use the same data set eh. So, kailangan yung interpretation ulit ang kailangan pumapasok kapag local governments. We've had this conversation, discussions with local governments since the start at talagang ayaw nila talaga yung ginagawa yung nirarank sila. Lalong-lalo na kapag ang ginamit natin na ranking ay yung actual number of cases because that will not really be reflective dun sa nangyayari dun sa kanilang area. So yung amin pong mga datos, may difference talaga with local governments, pero after 1 to 2 days, nakakapag-reconcile kami at nagiging pareho na po. Meron lang talagang validation process, Congresswoman BH.
Yes, thank you precisely. So please take note of that, Octa, ha, para hindi tayo nagkakagulo, especially sa local governments. And ang isang pang pakiusap ko through you, Mr. Chair, can we also concentrate on recovery rate? Napaka-importante po ng recovery rate and it seems hindi natin hina-highlight ito and that is one thing that I would like to request DOH and Octa to also concentrate on kasi ang ganda-ganda ng recovery rate ng ating bansa compared to other first world countries that people do not realize because hindi tayo nagfo-focus on that. Do we also expect a shift on that, Octa and DOH?
Siguro, Chair, I'll also respond kasi Congressman
Yes,
gave some very good suggestions, excellent suggestions. If people have noticed, because of the experience we had with Taguig and with Baguio, we now collaborate with local government units more closely. You know this, I can verify this, Congressman BH with Quezon City in particular. Quezon City is like a thermometer of the situation in the National Capital Region. And yes, we validate, we agree with the statement of Yusek Vergere. The difference in the validation process, is clarified over a short period of time. And local governments tend to say, tama rin pala yung data na nasa DOH. And they end up saying, okay, mukhang tama naman yung projection din yung Octa. Kasi we use DOH data, the official data. In fact, we want to take this opportunity to thank DOH kasi Octa would not be Octa without DOH. Wala kaming access sa data sa DOH. We won't be able to do our projections. And this is the best practice, international best practice among research organizations looking at COVID, that you only use the national data set of government. So the government's data set, which is produced by the Department of Health. And yes, we will include all of those new metrics that you suggested. And we will work with, in fact, if you noticed, we've also moved from a granular, look at cities, to a regional approach when we do our reports. We still do the weekly reports, but we do more regional perspective now because we're seeing that the situation in the National Capital Region is also improving. And I think any cursory look at the last 3 days of news will see that Octa has been working together with the private sector in relaying the improvements that we're all experiencing now. I hope the DOH also sees that also.
Mr. Chair, question ko lang sa Octa, Mr. Ranger, not to offend anyone ha, pag naman kunwari, diba, like yan, na-offend yung Quezon City before, na-offend yung Baguio, na-offend yung Taguig, when you collaborate with them, afterwards, wala naman tayong sinisingil sa kanila. Wala naman tayong nagiging
Wala po, you can verify naman po, you can take if you don't take a word
po. Maging attack, collect, defend, collect tayo sa issue.
Wala po. Lahat po yan. And they can all attest naman, Octa has no government projects. It has not used no government funds in the activities, in its operations. And we do this talaga as part of our public service po. Yung pagtulong sa mga local governments po, normal na. Ang dami humingi ng tulong sa amin po na wala ho talaga kaming kina-charge. And then you can always verify. And in fact, we can the city that we have been helping for the last year or so is the Quezon City po. You can always go to Quezon City and the mayor will attest that we've been helping on a weekly basis po. Because why? Because we're from UP po eh. Kapitbahay, dito kami sa Quezon City. Kung di man lamang matulungan ng Quezon City.
But, you know, I just wanted to make sure na talagang
yeah, wala po talaga, wala po.
Yung income generating is dun sa rider questions lang ng mga surveys ninyo, like you mentioned.
Sa survey lang
earlier.
talaga po, hindi namin kaya ibigay for free, ma'am eh. Yun lang talaga ang
Of
situation.
course, and we understand that.